All the Young Dudes, James's Perspective by Stay in Dreams. Chapter 13, First Year, Blood Traitor. Tuesday, the 27th December 1971. James and Peter had spent the day out in the snowy hills, sledging down slopes until their faces were numb and their laughter echoed off the trees. It was the sort of day that felt timeless, when nothing else mattered but the cold bite of the wind and the thrill of speeding down the snow. By the time evening settled in, casting long shadows over the white landscape, the two boys had found a spot beneath a massive pine tree, its branches heavy with snow. They leaned back against the trunk, catching their breath and sharing ideas for how they might get back at Snape. "You know, James," Peter began, his voice hesitant, almost as if he wasn't sure he should be speaking at all. "We should really do something about Snape. He's been on our case all times." James nodded, a mischievous glint sparkling in his eyes. "Absolutely, Pete. Can't let him think he's got the upper hand. But there's the thing. Our best strategies are off the board. We need a proper plan, and it's a bit tricky without Sirius and Remus." James had plenty of ideas. That wasn't the problem. His mind was always buzzing with schemes and pranks, like a fireworks display that never quite ran out. But execution was another story entirely. It was as if the ideas were there, floating around like clouds, but pinning them down, turning them into something real, that was where things got sticky. That's where Sirius and Remus came in, filling in the gaps and making everything run like clockwork. With Sirius, there was always that extra bit of daring, that flair that turned a simple prank into a masterpiece. And Remus, well, Remus made sure they didn't end up in McGonagall's office every other week. Without them, James felt a bit like a broomstick without a handle, fast, but no real direction. Peter scratched his head, brow furrowed in concentration. What if we turned his hair green, or hacked his robes to turn into a dress in the middle of potions? No, wait, that's too mean, isn't it? James chuckled, though there was a touch of sadness behind it. Not bad ideas, Pete, but they're missing something. No flair, no drama. That's what Sirius and Remus bring to the table. I miss those blokes, you know. Peter's expression darkened. For just a moment, something unspoken flickering in his eyes. Something that looked suspiciously like jealousy. "Well, I'm not a genius like them, am I? I can't come up with the amazing plans they do." James noticed the change in Peter's tone and felt a pang of guilt. He placed a reassuring hand on Peter's shoulder, giving it a squeeze. "Don't be daft, Pete. You're just as much a part of this as they are. We all have our strengths, right? We just need a bit more patience, that's all. And don't sell yourself short. You're more creative than you give yourself credit for." Peter forced a smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, sure, James. We'll come up with something." As they trudged back towards the house, their breath visible in the cold air, James couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Every idea they tossed around felt flat, dull, compared to the usual brilliance of their full group. It wasn't just the absence of Sirius and Remus that weighed on him, it was the way Peter had looked at him, like he was just a placeholder until the others came back. James had never really had to think about making Peter feel included before. Peter was always there, eager to please, always following along with whatever madcap scheme James and Sirius cooked up. But now, with the other two missing, James realized just how much he'd taken Peter's presence for granted. The truth was, James had always felt a need to impress Sirius and Remus, to be the funniest, the cleverest, the most daring. But with Peter, it was different. It was comfortable, easy. Maybe that was why he hadn't noticed Peter's insecurities before. But now he saw it clear as the day and it gnawed at him. As they continued walking the snow crunching beneath their boots, James glanced over at Peter, determined to set things right. "You know, Pete," he began, his voice earnest, "I like hanging out with you. You're a good mate, and I'm glad we're doing this." Peter's eyes brightened just a little, the corners of his mouth twitching upwards. "You mean that, James?" "Of course I do," James replied, giving him a genuine smile. "But yeah, I do miss Sirius and Remus. The Marauders were like the heart of mischief at Hogwarts. Without them, it feels like something's missing." Peter's smile faded again, and his shoulders slumped slightly. "Yeah, I get it. They're great, and I'm just me." James stopped walking, turning to face Peter fully. "Oi! Knock that off," he said firmly. "You're not just you. You're Peter Pettigrew, one of the Marauders, and we're all in this together. We'll sort out the Snape business, and when Sirius and Remus get back, we'll be the unstoppable foursome again. But until then, it's you and me, and we're going to make sure Snivellus regrets ever crossing us." Peter managed a small smile, the flicker of insecurity still lingering but tempered by James's words. "Yeah, you're right, James. We'll show Snape not to mess with us." As they made their way back toward the warmth of the house, James silently vowed to himself to make sure Peter knew just how much he was valued. Because if there was one thing James Potter knew, it was that true friendship was magic in its own right. And he wasn't about to let any of his friends forget that. Later that evening, the Potter kitchen was filled with the sounds of clattering dishes, laughter, and the sweet, comforting aroma of home-cooked meals. James, as usual, was bustling around the room, his energy boundless despite the long day of sledging and plotting. He was doing his best to appear carefree, but there was always that undercurrent of restlessness with him, especially when he felt something brewing. His mother was deep in conversation with her sister, Clara, who had popped over for a visit. The two women were chatting away, their voices rising and falling in that familiar comforting way that made the house feel even more like home. As James hovered near the stove, pretending to be engrossed in stirring something, he kept one ear tuned to their conversation. It was impossible not to, really. The topic had shifted to Clara's daughter Emma, who had just gotten engaged. There was something about the way they talked about it, all soft smiles and warm tones, that made James feel oddly out of place. "Oh, Clara, I'm so happy for Emma," his mom was saying, her voice filled with genuine delight. "Engagements are such joyous occasions. It feels like only yesterday James was just a baby, and now look at us, discussing weddings." James cringed inwardly. Weddings? It was the thought of thing that made him feel like he was being gently nudged towards a future he wasn't quite ready for. A future that seemed distant and almost too adult for him to comprehend. He was determined to stay young forever, or at least to cling to the idea of endless pranks and carefree days with his mates. Aunt Clara, looking dreamy, nodded along. "Yes, time flies. It won't be long before James starts thinking about love and marriage too." James nearly dropped the spoon he was holding, a wave of discomfort rolling through him. Love and marriage? That was something grown-ups did. Not him. Not now. And definitely not while there were still so many pranks to pull and adventures to have. His mom, of course, noticed his discomfort straight away. There was a glint of mischief in her eyes as she teased. "Oh, James, you'll find a lovely girl one day, just like your cousin Emma did. Who knows, you might even marry your best friend." James wrinkled his nose in response, the idea so far removed from his current priorities that he couldn't help but laugh a little. "Nah, Mom. All I want is to live with the Marauders forever and have fun. I don't want to grow up. I don't care about girls." His mom and Aunt Clara exchanged one of those knowing glances, the kind that adults seem to share when they thought they knew something you didn't. Both women stifled a chuckle, which only made James more determined to avoid the topic altogether. His mom, clearly enjoying herself, pressed on. Speaking of girls, James, are there any special ones at school that you fancy? James felt his face grow hot, the kind of heat that crept up your neck and settled in your cheeks. Why did they want to talk about this stuff anyway? It wasn't like he was some lovesick fool constantly mooning over girls. Oh, Mom, you know me. I'm too busy causing mischief with serious and the other to think about that sort of thing. But Aunt Clara wasn't about to let him off the hook that easily. With a teasing smile, she chimed in. Come on, James. Every young wizard has a crush on you. Is there a little witch who's caught your eye? James screamed uncomfortably, desperately searching for a way out of this conversation. He was used to quick escapes and clever distractions. But this felt like being conquered in the Great Hall with no wand in hand. Well, you see, Aunt Clara, Hogwarts is a big place, and I just haven't thought about that kind of stuff yet. The two women exchanged amused glances, clearly having the time of their lives at his expense. His mom reached out and patted his shoulder, her tone softening. Oh, sweetie, there's no rush. Just focus on your studies and having fun with your friends. Love will find you when the time is right. James let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, grateful to have the focus shifted back to something he was comfortable with. His carefree adventures with the Marauders. Exactly, Mom. No need to worry about all that now. So, who's up for some more mince pies? And with that, he quickly diverted attention back to the food, hoping to leave all this talk of love and marriage far, far behind. Saturday, December 31, 1971. The home was bathed in the soft glow of golden fairy lights, the warmth from the fireplace casting flickering shadows across the walls as the cloud inched closer to midnight. The living room, usually so quiet in the late hours, was now alive with the cozy chaos of the Potter family, all eagerly awaiting the arrival of the new year. The comforting scent of mince pies mixed with the rich aroma of hot cocoa filled the air, and the room echoed with laughter, the clinking of mugs, and the occasional pop from the fire. They were all bundled up on the couch, surrounded by an haphazard pile of blankets, sharing stories and jokes as they waited for the countdown to begin. His mom, her eyes sparkling with affection, looked over at her son and asked, Are you excited for the new year, James? James, always ready with a grin, flashed one now, his face illuminated by the golden light of the fire. Absolutely, Mom. It's going to be brilliant. I can feel it. His dad, sitting next to him with that familiar twinkle in his eye, chimed in. We've had quite the year, haven't we? Full of adventures and a fair bit of mischief, if I recall correctly. James nodded, a mischievous glint in his eye. And I wouldn't have it any other way, Dad. Every bit of it was brilliant. As the clock approached midnight, they huddled close together, each holding a steaming mug of cocoa. The sound of distant fireworks began to fill the air, the crackling excitement reaching them even here, and the energy in the room grew. 10, 9, 8, they counted down together, their voices filled with the kind of joy that comes from being surrounded by those you love most. In the final seconds, they shouted, 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year! Cheers erupted as they exchanged hugs, the laughter mingling with the distant sound of fireworks outside. His mom pulled James into a tight embrace, her eyes shining with that deep love she felt for him, a love that had only grown stronger with each passing year. Happy New Year, my foolish boy, she whispered into his ear, her voice full of warmth and a touch of playful affection. His dad, grinning as he clapped James on the back, added, May this year bring you even more laughter, more mischief, and a bit more wisdom too, eh? As the room filled with the soft pops of fireworks in the distance, They settled back onto the couch. James nestled comfortably between his parents. The three of them sipped their cocoa, the warmth from the mugs seeping into their hands. "Here's to family, love, and the adventures that await us in the new year," his mom toasted, raising her mug with a smile that was pure contentment. James, never one to miss a chance for a toast, chimed in with a grin. "And to the Marauders, may our pranks be legendary this year. No, even more legendary." Laughter bubbled up once more as they clinked their mugs together, the sound a soft, joyful ring that seemed to echo around the room. As the clock moved past midnight, James felt a wave of tiredness wash over him, the excitement of the evening finally catching up. His dad chuckled, noticing the way James's eyelids were dropping. "Looks like someone's ready for bed." His mom smiled softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from James's forehead. "How about we ring in the new year with a little nap on the couch?" The suggestion was met with sleepy nods from James, who was already feeling the pull of sleep. With blankets tucked snugly around them, the Potters settled into a comfortable silence, the crackling of the fire and the distant sounds of celebration outside lulling them into a peaceful slumber. And there they stayed, nestled together, as the first moments of the new year drifted by, wrapped in warmth and the quiet comfort of being exactly where they were meant to be. Sunday, the 1st January 1972. The first day of the new year dawned crisp and clear, the kind of morning that made you feel like anything was possible. His mom was bustling around the kitchen, preparing a hearty breakfast, the smell of sizzling bacon and fresh toast filling the air. James, still a bit groggy from last night's late celebrations, could feel a sense of anticipation buzzing beneath his skin. Today was going to be brilliant. His dad had promised to take him to the ministry, and James had been pestering him the entire Christmas break for this very moment. He could hardly believe it when his dad finally gave in. The Ministry of Magic was the stuff of legend, a place where all the important things happened, and James was practically vibrating with curiosity. He'd heard bits and pieces from his parents and Peter's dad too, and his imagination had done the rest, filling in the gaps with wild stories of enchanted offices and auroras, dueling dark wizards in the corridors, and now he was finally going to see it all for himself. The ministry turned out to be even more impressive than James had imagined. It was a labyrinth of enchanted corridors filled with bustling witches and wizards, each one hurrying off to some mysterious task. The grand atrium took his breath away. The golden fountain in the center, with its witch, wizard, and magical creatures, seemed to sparkle under the enchanted ceiling. James's eyes were wide as saucers, darting around to catch every detail, every glimpse of magic at work. He barely noticed the oval that swooped low overhead, its wings a blur as it delivered a parcel to one of the upper floors. His dad chuckled, noticing his son's awe. "Quite something, isn't it?" "Yeah," James breathed, his head on a swivel. It was like Hogwarts, but bigger, and full of grown-ups who were actually doing important stuff. He could hardly believe his luck. First year at school, and now this. As they turned a corner, they nearly collided with a young man with flaming red hair, who was deeply engrossed in examining what looked like a silver box with two slits at the top. James squinted at it, trying to make sense of the label. Toaster. Whatever it was, the bloke seemed fascinated by it. "Which way are you going, Weasley?" a passing witch snapped, her voice as sharp as her nose. But the young man didn't seem to mind, his attention still fixed on the muggle artifact in his hands. His dad held out a hand to stop James from bumping into the redhead, who finally looked up with a sheepish grin. Oh, terribly sorry about that. Just lost in the marvels of Muggle artifacts. Fascinating, aren't they? His dad laughed, clapping the man on the back. This is James, my son. Weasley, meet the future troublemaker of the Potter family. James grinned and shook the man's hand, feeling a bit more at ease. Arthur Weasley, a pleasure to meet you, James. Always good to see young witches and wizards interested in the magical world. Arthur's enthusiasm was infectious, and James found himself warming up to him immediately. Arthur started talking about plugs, electricity, and something called a rubber duck, and James listened, half confused and half intrigued. He didn't know the first thing about Muggles, really, but the way Arthur went on about them made it sound like they were doing magic without even realizing it. His dad chuckled again, his voice booming in the marble corridor. Well, Arthur, it seems you've found a kindred spirit in James here. He's been itching to see the Ministry for a while now. Arthur's eyes twinkled. Ah, the Ministry. Always a place of wonders, though not everyone sees it that way. Well, I must be going now. Can't be caught slacking in my first week at work. He gave them a friendly wave before hurrying off, still holding the toaster like it was some kind of ancient relic. He's the new kid on the block, his dad explained as they continued walking. Just an assistant right now, but you can tell his heart's in Muggle studies. I wouldn't be surprised if he runs the whole department one day. He seems nice, James said, a crooked smile on his face. Talks a lot, though. Sounds like someone else I know, his dad teased, ruffling James's hair affectionately. But you're right, he's a good lad. Got his heart in the right place. As they wandered further into the ministry, the corridors echoed with the hurried footsteps of wizards and witches, all caught up in their own important tasks. But their easy stroll took a sharp turn when they rounded a corner and nearly bumped into two imposing figures. One of them had a pale, pointed face, with blond hair so light it was nearly white, and cold grey eyes that seemed to cut right through you. The other, tall and well-built, had an oddly familiar look about him. Handsome, with fair skin, black hair, and piercing blue eyes. James's stomach dropped when he caught sight of their name tags. The blonde was Abraxas Malfoy, and the other was Orion Black. He's Sirius's dad! Orion's eyes, cold and unyielding, locked onto James and his dad. Beside him, Abraxas wore a smirk that made James's skin crawl. His dad, though clearly uneasy, kept his face calm and composed, but James could sense the tension radiating off him. Potter, Orion sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. What brings you and your offspring to the ministry? Surely the likes of you don't belong in these esteemed halls. His dad's jaw tightened, but he kept his tone measured. James, standing a little closer to his dad now, felt a swirl of confusion and discomfort. He'd heard about the Blacks, of course, but seeing Sirius's dad here, looking at him like that, made it all too real. Abraxas chimed in, his voice mocking. And there I thought this place was reserved for respectable wizards, not blood traders and their impure spawn. James's heart raced, and he glanced up at his dad, unsure of what to do or say. What's a blood traitor, Dad? He whispered, trying to make sense of it all. His dad leaned down slightly, his voice low and firm. We'll talk about it later, James. Just ignore them. But ignoring Orion and Abraxas was easier said than done. Orion's gaze bore into James, his lips curling in a sneer. So, you're the Potter boy, my son's little friend. James gulped, suddenly realizing that Orion's hostility wasn't just about his dad. It was about Sirius, too. No wonder Sirius never talked about his family, not if this was what he had to deal with. The tension in the air was thick, and James could feel his heart pounding in his chest, a mix of fear and anger. Abraxas, his tone laced with condescension. added, "Word has it that the influence of your kind is spreading. It's a shame that pure blood lines are tainted by such connections." His dad, now visibly struggling to keep his composure, spoke firmly. "Orion, Abracas, we have business to attend to. Move aside." Orion stepped forward, blocking their path with a menacing glare. "You think you can just waltz through here, Potter? Do you think I'm going to let your blood traitor spawn taint my son's mind any further? Your kind is polluting our world." His dad's hand twitched towards his watch, but before anything could happen, a voice echoed down the corridor. "What's going on here?" An older man with a face full of scars appeared, his presence commanding and intimidating. Orion and Abracas reluctantly stepped aside, shooting one last hateful glare at the Potters. The man's gaze lingered on James for a moment, his eyes sharp and assessing. "You're right, lad?" James looked up at him, reading the name tag that said Alistair Moody, Aurora. He nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and unease wash over him. His dad, still bristling with anger, nodded curtly. "Well, fine. Just a misunderstanding." Moody gestured for them to follow him, and they walked down the corridor in silence until they reached an office. The Aurora turned to his dad, his voice gruff but not unkind. "He'll be fine here." With a flick of his wand, the door to the little hallway between the office and the main corridor closed. His gaze softened as he looked at James. "Me and your father have some business to discuss. Won't take long." His dad gave James a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "Wait here for me, James. I'll be back shortly." James lingered outside the office, his thoughts swirling. The encounter with Black and Malfoy had left him shaken, more than he wanted to admit. He'd never had someone look at him like that before, with such hatred and disgust, and it made him feel sick to his stomach. And that word they used, blood traitor. They'd said it like those Slytherins at school spat out the word mudblood at Lily. He stood up straighter when his father returned, but the question was already on his lips. "Dad," James began hesitantly, "what's a blood traitor?" His dad sighed, crouching down to James's level, his expression softening. "James, it's a term some wizards use to describe those who don't share their beliefs about blood purity. It's a narrow-minded view, and it's not something you need to worry about." "But why did they call us that?" James asked, frowning, his voice smaller than usual. His dad hesitated, searching for the right words. "Some wizards believe that only those with pure blood lineage are truly magical. They think anyone with connections to Muggles or Muggle-borns is betraying their magical heritage. But James, it's just a belief, a wrong one at that. Blood purity doesn't determine a wizard's worth. What matters is who you are and the choices you make." James took this in, his young mind trying to untangle the complex web of prejudice he'd just been introduced to. "So, we're not bad?" His dad smiled gently, cupping James's cheek in a way that made everything feel a bit more okay. "Not at all, my boy. We're proud of who we are, and we don't need to follow anyone else's small-minded views. The wizarding world is big and strange, and you'll meet all sorts. The trick is to stay true to yourself and what you know is right." James nodded, relief mingling with the confusion in his eyes. His dad ruffled his hair affectionately, messing it up just the way James liked, before they headed out of the ministry. But as they walked through the labyrinth of corridors, James's thoughts couldn't help but drift back to the day's encounters, looping around and round like a restless snitch. Sirius is stuck in that house with that man and the rest of his family. What if they hurt him because he's friends with me, a blood? They think I've ruined their son. What if Sirius starts to believe— No, he wouldn't. He's my best mate. But Remus is a half-blood. His mom was a Muggle. This blood isn't pure. What if people? No, no. I'll protect Remus from anything. I won't let him get hurt. And Lily, she's a... He yanked off his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose, as if he could physically push his thoughts out of his head. He refused to let them spiral further. His stomach still twisted uncomfortably, a heavy pit of guilt and a fear settling there. But as they finally stepped into the sunlight outside, the knot began to loosen, just a bit. The warm light on his face helped him think clearer. James made a silent vow then and there, standing in the bright January sun. He would never let anyone he cared about feel the way he had today. Small, unwanted, quirky, like he didn't belong. He'd protect them all, no matter what it took. He'd prove to the world that blood didn't make you better or worse. It just was. What mattered was who you chose to be, and James knew exactly who he wanted to be.